I hate YouTubers that just ramble on, so let's get right into it. In this video, I'm gonna give you my top 25 tips for new Uber drivers and Lyft drivers. These tips will help you make more money, get high ratings, and overall have a way better time driving for Lyft and driving for Uber. Number 1, dash cam. I had to start off here because, as you can imagine, just statistics, the more you're on the road, the more likely you are to be involved in some type of altercation, whether it's an accident or something happening outside of your vehicle or some type of dispute inside of your vehicle. The amount of money you're going to spend on a dash cam is so small in comparison to the amount of money you would potentially have to spend, including the hassle of, let's say, it turns into a, well, he did this or she did this situation. Having that evidence or that footage really helps prove your side of the story. I mean, hey, even if you're not driving for Uber and Lyft, a dash cam is a great investment. I've linked this below to a dash cam if you want to check it out. In addition, throughout this video, I'm going to be mentioning a lot of items, and I'll have a huge list of all those items I mentioned on this video. Number 2, peak hours. This is now Uber and Lyft 101, but you're going to make the most amount of money driving during the peak hours. Those are the morning commutes, evening commutes, Friday nights, and Saturday nights. In terms of the exact time period, I actually find it does fluctuate from city to city, but overall, in terms of the average, the morning commutes, you're really looking at about 7 to 9 a.m. Evening commutes, about 5 to 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday nights, probably about 7 to 8 p.m. and then ending around 2 or 3 a.m. Those are the best times to drive. Now, of course, it does depend city by city. In Vegas, you could probably drive on a Friday night till maybe 5 a.m., right? Or let's say in other cities, I've seen some people start driving around 6 a.m. because people maybe go to work earlier. It does depend city to city, but overall, morning commutes, evening commutes, Friday and Saturday nights are the best time to drive, and you're gonna make the most amount of money. Number 3, both apps. I don't know what it is, but I've met so many drivers, even experienced ones, who only sign up with one app and have never even applied for the other one. 1, it's free, so you might as well sign up with both. But 2, the biggest thing is dependent on city to city, there's a lot of different factors. One app, like Uber for example, could pay more than Lyft, or it could be the opposite. Lyft could pay more than Uber. It really depends, and even weekend to weekend. I've said this before in other videos. There was one weekend in Boston on St. Patrick's Day where Lyft was giving a crazy bonus. I think it was like $25 an hour minimum hourly guarantee. Then Uber one-upped it to $30 an hour. Lyft texted me 10 minutes later, said, we changed our mind, we're gonna up it to $35 an hour. And it was a bidding war. And who wins in that bidding war? You. Sign up with both apps. This is one of the most optimal ways to make the most amount of money because you can always fluctuate between both. Like I said, there's been some times I'm driving on a Friday night and I'm like, you know what? Lyft just isn't paying that much. I go pull up Uber, boom, Uber's paying way more. Always go back and forth, test the waters out with both apps because that's the best way to make so much money. Number 4, start small. I have to stress this to a lot of beginning drivers because I've heard of some drivers being like, oh, Mark, I'm going all in. I'm gonna start driving full time, and they go almost from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Do not do that. Always start off part-time, test the water, see if you like it, right, or don't, see how much money you can make or not, and then go from there. The reason why is, in case you don't know, the number one factor that determines how much money you can make as a driver is your location, which seems kind of random, right? It's kind of a random thing to bring up, but this is a survey done by Rideshare. They did this years ago, but they do this every year. I just like this one particular year because they showed things really in depth. But as you can see, even if, like, say you're the best driver, if you're in a bad area, you're not gonna make that much an hour compared to another area, and it's very unfortunate. That's why I suggest always start off small. You can start driving part-time and be like, wow, I'm making really good money. Maybe I should do this more. Or you start off driving and you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm not making that much. The hourly rate is horrible, or I can only drive during the non-peak hours. You know what? Maybe Uber and Lyft is just not worth it for me. Always start off small and then go from there. Number 5, Rideshare Insurance. This is gonna be pretty brief. Just get it. Contact your auto insurance and say, hey, just letting you know, I'm now driving for Uber and Lyft or another ride-sharing company. Just let them know, because the last thing you want to be in terms of a situation is you get into an accident or something happens. You call your insurance, you say, hey, I was driving for Uber and this happened. And they're like, wait, you were driving for Uber or for Lyft or another ride-sharing company? We didn't know that. We're not going to cover you. And unfortunately, or probably not surprisingly, insurance companies will use any excuse they can to not cover you. So always contact them, especially right in the beginning. Before you even start driving, let them know you're driving and ask for extra rideshare insurance. Number 6, window lock. This is an amazing pro tip, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. And when I talk to a lot of beginning Uber and Lyft drivers, they say, hey Mark, I'm planning on driving on Friday and Saturday nights. I feel like that's usually the biggest place people start with first, especially let's say if you have another 9-to-5 job. It just makes it a lot easier and you can make the most amount of money. And I don't know what it is, but there's something with drunk people who love rolling down windows. I don't know why. So in case you don't know, with the window lock, it disables any window in your car besides your own from being rolled down. And this way you can kind of gauge it where, let's say someone's like, hey, driver, I'm trying to roll down the window, but it's not going down. You can kind of be like, okay, do they want some fresh air, or do they just want to scream out the window or do something obnoxious for whatever reason? This also saves you from this odd altercation that's happened to me before, where someone rolls down the window, they start screaming something, and I'm like, oh my God. Great, so then I have to roll it back up, then they try to roll it down, then this is like passive-aggressive thing, and I'm like, great, now I have to have a conversation and ask them why they keep rolling it down. It just saves you a lot of time and hassle. Always have a window lock on. Number 7, idling over driving. This is a big pro tip, especially for beginning drivers, because a lot of drivers, when they first start out, will drop somebody off, drive around, just waiting, then they'll accept a ride and continue. You are way better off dropping somebody off and idling somewhere, right? Don't wait outside of someone's house, because that's kind of sketchy. Or let's say if you're in a city, make sure you're in a safe area, but you're way better off just sitting and waiting and not moving as opposed to driving around, because when you drive around, you're wasting more in gas, more miles you're putting on your car, more depreciation, etc., etc. Now, this pro tip was more useful, I'd say, years ago when Uber and Lyft first came out. Now, in case you don't know, Uber and Lyft has a feature where even before you finish a ride, you can accept a new one. So you're constantly almost overlapping rides. But let's say if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of traffic, let's say it's a very slow night, you may have that lag where you drop somebody off and you're just sitting there waiting. You're way better off sitting and not moving than moving around and wasting all that gas and putting on those miles on your car. Number 8, caffeine pills. I have to stress, be careful with these, but these are so useful for drivers. The reason why is 1, it keeps you awake. As we all know, it's caffeine. 2 is I find that when I used to drink coffee or have any type of liquid when driving, I'd have to go to the bathroom more, which was super annoying. With caffeine pills, you get all that caffeine without getting all that liquid. And 3, they are super easy to take. One thing I have to stress, the typical amount of caffeine in a caffeine pill is 200 milligrams. If you are very sensitive to caffeine, that is a lot. It's about, depending on the strength of the coffee, about 2 to 3 cups of coffee in one pill. So it's pretty intense. Another suggestion I have is to have something called Neuromints. Again, link this below to all this different stuff. With Neuromints, 1 serving of these is typically 2 mints, and that's equal to 1 cup of coffee. So let's say if you're like, Mark, I'm very sensitive to coffee. With Neuromints, you can have just 1 mint that's equal to 40 milligrams of caffeine, and then you get basically a half cup of coffee. It's a little pick-me-up, and you're good to go. Number 9, expenses tracking. Now, because you are driving, and this depends on your area, you are typically going to be an independent contractor. Now, in some situations, you may be an employee. Whole other subject for a whole other video. This has been a big debate a lot in different countries and different continents, even here in America in different states. So this is changing. But overall, in case you've never done the tax accounting behind being an independent contractor, you do what's called write-offs. Now, I want to stress, I'm a former accountant, but I'm not your accountant. I do suggest hiring a tax accountant, but overall, this means any expense you have related to Uber and Lyft can be written off. So you want to track all your expenses. So gas, you can write that off, but you can write off miles as well. If, let's say, you get a car wash, you can write that off. Let's say you buy some of the items I'm mentioning in this video. Those are write-offs because those are used to drive. If, let's say, you have to do maintenance on your car, that's also a write-off. Keep track of everything that you purchase that's in relation to Uber and Lyft. Number 10, phone mount. Speaking of items to buy This is probably right up there with a dash cam. Everybody right now uses their phone as their GPS. And it still blows my mind when I see drivers who do this weird thing where they have their phone kind of in front of them. You've probably seen this. And they're doing that like weird head bob by being on the GPS and then looking up, doing this motion with your head. One, super annoying. But two, it's incredibly dangerous and you're way more likely to get into an accident. Buy a phone mount. They're like 15 or 20 bucks. I've even seen some at the dollar store. So let's say you're really trying to money, go to Dollar Tree or whatever and get one of them because they can have your phone mounted, whether it's on your air ventilation system or on kind of your main dashboard. Whatever the case is, pretty easy to do. Not only is this super useful for looking at your GPS and everything, but also you don't want to miss out on any rides. If your phone's, like, say, down here and you're driving and Uber says, hey, we have a new ride, you want to accept it, and you miss it, well, that's going to be unfortunate, and it can affect your acceptance rate. So just have your phone right there, get the phone mount, way safer, way easier. Number 11, charging cables. Now, I want to take a quick side note and say that back in the day, it was super common to have like amenities in your car, like candy, snacks, gum, mints, water, etc., etc. You don't really need that anymore, but there are a couple staples to just make it way better for customer service. The biggest one is having a charging cord. Everybody has their phone, and not only is this good for the passengers, but for you. If you're going to be driving a lot, it's going to be eating at your phone battery a tremendous amount. This is also why a lot of drivers have two different charging cords. One for their phone, one for anybody else who needs to charge their phone. Another big pro tip, and again, items listed below in the description. Another big pro tip is get a multi-charging cord. What I mean by that is it allows you to charge multiple phones depending on what you have. So there's one port, it's like say a USB to multi-port. One port's just for the iPhone, another one for the Android, etc., etc. That way, like say if someone gets in your car, regardless of their phone, you can charge it. Number 12, say my name. This makes me think of Breaking Bad, that epic scene with Walter White. He was onto something in that scene. The reason why, always say the passenger's name. The reason why, my first experience as a driver, a lot of people ask me, what was your first ride like? It was pretty interesting because I was driving in Boston and there was a corner that I had to pick somebody up. And her name, I think, was like Jessica or something. So it was right at this corner of a Pandora bread and I was driving for Lyft, pulled up, and someone came in the car and said, hey, Lyft? And I said, yep, Lyft. So they got in the car, I start driving. Didn't think anything of it. I start getting a bunch of weird calls, but it looks like a spam call. She starts getting a bunch of spam calls, and I'm like, what's going on? Turns out, two girls, ordered a Lyft at the exact same time, at the exact same location, and I picked up the wrong one. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is my first ride. And that was a good, I guess, first lesson to always say the name. When someone approaches your car and gets in, especially like say if it's a drunk Friday or Saturday night where people are drinking a lot, always say, hey, Jessica, Tom, Mike, whatever the case is, make sure you're picking up the right person. And the best way to do this is to say the name. Number 13, good posture. This is one a lot of drivers don't think about. In case you don't know, sitting is one of the worst things you can do for your body, especially for extended periods of time. And a lot of the times they talk about, well, people in an office, right? You're sitting in a cubicle, but at least in an office, you can kind of stand up, walk around, maybe stretch a little bit. But if you're driving for hours on end, you may not be getting up at all, right? You may go just nonstop. So one huge pro tip is work on maybe having your seat as opposed to being super far back. Have it as straight up as possible. I also have links just below in the description to a couple different almost massage or type of pads you can put on your seat so your posture's a lot better. I know this sounds like a weird one or like a small thing to bring up, but I promise you, if you start driving a lot, you're gonna notice your back might not feel the best. It's not the best for your body in general. And the amount of money you could spend on one of those nice paddings on the back of your seat, the amount of time you spend, which takes 2 seconds to have maybe your seat more upright so your posture's better, it's gonna save you a world of pain and a world of just body aches overall. Just do this, I promise you, especially if you're doing full-time driving and you're really racking up those hours, having good posture goes a long way. Number 14, Huel. Now, in case you don't know, I love Huel. Huel is powdered food. You put a couple of scoops of this powder in a blender cup with water, you shake it up, you chug it, and I love Huel, especially for driving. One, it is super inexpensive. One meal, or basically one serving of Huel, is roughly about $2 to $3. That's great. The second thing is it's incredibly good for you. I'm huge into health and fitness. And if you think about it, when you're driving, you don't have a microwave, you don't have a refrigerator. So you do have to kind of rely on maybe getting food somewhere else usually. It's way healthier for you than fast food and other basically junk that you're gonna have. I even did an experiment where I lived off only Huel for an entire month. I'm not exaggerating. Huel has everything your body needs. It's incredibly good for you. And lastly, and I think this is a big one for me, number 3 is it's super convenient, because even the time to pull into McDonald's, yeah, it's pretty quick because it's fast food, but it's actually, in my opinion, quicker to pull over the side of the road, take out Huel, it's powder, put it into a blender cup, shake it up, and chug it. You just had a super healthy, inexpensive meal right there. It's faster than getting McDonald's or Burger King or any other fast food. This allows you to have food on the go that's super good for you, and it allows you to keep driving without wasting any time. Number 15, early drop-off. This is a great pro tip any single time it's busy, whether it's a Friday, Saturday night, let's say there's something going on during the day, whatever the case is. As you're approaching, let's say, a road, a street, whatever, where you see tons of traffic. We've all seen this in our city, where if you get stuck in that huge roadblock and you're boxed in, you're just gonna be waiting for like 15, 20 minutes, inching your way until you can get out of there. So a big pro tip is to do the early drop-off. What you do is, as you're approaching, you say to your passengers, hey guys, just letting you know, with this huge line of cars, we could be waiting forever, and it's gonna take you way longer to get into that bar. The lines get longer. I can just drop you off here, that way it saves you time. And most of the time, people are like, hey, you know what? That's actually a good idea, because this is a win-win. 1, they get into the bar, they get into that event sooner, so they're not waiting longer. And 2, it's a win for you, because if it's a Friday night and those surges and peaks are high, there's a lot of bonuses going on, by you sitting in that long line of cars, just waiting 15 or 20 minutes, you're basically making nothing. Always do the early drop-off. Now, there are some situations, like say it's really bad weather out, people sometimes don't mind waiting, like say it's a bunch of girls, and they're wearing high heels. Understandably, they don't want to walk a super far distance. So there are situations where people don't do this, but overall, people will be very happy you did. It's a win-win for everybody. Number 16, AUX Cord. This is just a staple for customer service. You have to have it going along with the phone charger, because people love to listen to their own music when going to their destination, especially on Friday and Saturday nights. And yes, a lot of cars now do have Bluetooth, but sometimes it is kind of tricky where you're driving and you're trying to connect to their Bluetooth. I don't know why sometimes Bluetooth can be a huge hassle, but also a lot of cars now have this safety feature where it actually does not allow you to add a new Bluetooth device if the car is moving. So this can be tricky where, like, say you have to then pull over, then connect, the person's phone to your car, etc., etc. By having the AUX cord, you take the cord up, you say, hey, whoever wants to throw on music, go for it. Good to go. Number 17, Pandora. I love Pandora. I know Spotify right now is the more popular service, but the reason why I love Pandora so much is it's super simple. I can type in a quick genre and instantly creates a station around that genre, and then I can basically set it, forget it, and leave it alone. So let's say it's in the morning, I might put on top 40, jazz, classical, whatever, something more relaxing. Let's say if it's a Friday night, I might throw in something more upbeat. In case you don't know, I'm actually an electronic artist, and I produce EDM music. I have my own Pandora station for me as an artist. I have a link this below if you want to bump it as well, so I might throw on that. And that's what I love about Pandora, especially if, let's say, someone comes in the car, and I'm like, hey, what music do you want to hear? And they're like, hey, you know what? Just throw on some hip-hop. Boom, I'll type in the hip-hop station. If someone comes in the car and they're like, just throw on some country, I type in top country or today's country, and it creates a station. I can leave it alone. It plays the exact genre or the vibe I want to have for that ride. Number 18, events. Now, I said way in the beginning of this video that you're going to make the most amount of money during the peak hours. There is a big asterisk on that, and that is events. Now, Lyft does have this on the app. Sign up with both, like I said, and you can track and see what events are going on during that week. For example, let's say it's a Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Usually not the craziest night, but let's say there's a big concert. Let's say it's New Year's Eve. Let's say there's a big sports event going on, whether it's a baseball game, a football game, whatever the case is. That is a huge way to make a lot of money, and sometimes events can make more money than Friday and Saturday nights because a lot of drivers don't think about it. I remember even one time in Boston, it was a Tuesday and Wednesday. There was a bunch of graduations going on. There's a lot of colleges in Boston. And what was great about this is Tuesday at 1 p.m., you're gonna make pretty much nothing in Boston. But during graduation time, when everybody is ordering Ubers and Lyfts, everybody's partying, and there's not a lot of drivers on the road, I made way more during that Tuesday and Wednesday than I would on a Friday and Saturday night, because surges are high, there's a lot of bonuses, a lot of incentives, and there's not that many drivers on the road. Check the events. Maybe every week, maybe every Sunday, just look to see what's going on in your city, because if there's a big event going on, you know you can make a lot of money. Number 19, set a quota. Now, one amazing part about Uber and Lyft, as we all know, is it's instantaneously flexible. You are your own boss. You turn on the app whenever you want, you turn it off whenever you want. One kind of negative side, though, is you are your own boss. What I mean by that is it's very easy when driving to be like, hey, you know what? I'm tired. I drove enough today. You know what? I'm gonna sign out. So a big pro tip I give to a lot of drivers is to set a quota. There's a couple different ways you can do this. One, you can do it by hours, saying, look, today, no matter what, I'm gonna drive 4 hours. 2 hours in the morning commute, 2 hours in the evening commute. Or you can do it by rides. You could say, oh, you know what? Today I'm gonna do 10 rides. Whether they're very short or very long, I'm gonna do 10 rides. Lastly, and in my opinion, this is the best solution, is to do it by the amount. So you could say, look, every day I'm gonna have to make $50 or $100. The second I reach that mark, I cash out, I sign out, and I'm good to go. I first started doing this when Lyft came out with their instant cash out option, which was amazing. In case you don't know, in case you haven't started driving yet, you can instantly cash out your earnings with Uber and Lyft. Lyft came out with this first, and they have this minimum threshold. Now that doesn't really exist, it's a little different. But when it first came out, you had to make at least $50, and then instantly you hit a button, boom, instantly in your bank account. So every day I would drive, and my quota was to make $50 in that day. The second I hit $50, I instantly cash out, it would jump in my bank account, and I could do whatever I want. Setting a quota overall, though, is a great way to kind of give yourself a benchmark, because remember, Uber and Lyft is not going to go after you. They're not going to say, hey, you know, you only did 10 rides today, you should really do 15. They're not going to go after you, and this is both good, but also bad, and that's why I suggest having a quota is a great way to keep on your certain marks as a driver. Number 20, AAA. I want to stress for pretty much everything I'm saying in this video, I have no affiliation with any of these companies, products, etc., etc. AAA is an amazing service. Every driver should have it. Even if you're not driving for Uber and Lyft, you need AAA, and this helps you if, let's say, your car breaks down, let's say you get a flat tire. I mean, there's a bunch of situations. Call AAA. They have roadside assistance to help you out with your situation. The amount of money you're going to spend on AAA is really not that expensive in the long run. The amount of money you're going to spend on a AAA membership is so small in comparison to, like, say, if you do break down, and let's say you're like, shoot, I have a flat tire, and something happened with my tire that I don't have the right tools to repair it, or to switch it out with a donut, or with another tire that you have. You call AAA, they come right to you, they help you out with your situation as soon as possible. Sometimes it does take a little bit, but the good thing about this is you can get back out on the road way quicker. Just get it. Number 21, finish strong. Now, a big question I get from a lot of drivers is they say, hey Mark, you know, I want to get a 5-star rating, of course, but the hard part is, what happens if someone gets into the car and is just like this on their phone the whole time? How do I get a 5-star rating if we're not really talking or interacting? Now, there's a few different ways, but one of the biggest ones is, remember, psychologically, people remember the first and the last thing of an interaction. Typically, not always, but typically. So when you first have someone get in the car, be like, hey, you know, how are you? How's your day going? You know, we have some small talk. Feel them out. Kind of be like, all right, does this person want to talk? Or are they talkative, right? You can kind of feel that out. But also, one of the last things that happens in your interaction is what they're going to remember the most. So let's say if someone's getting out of the car, you could say something like, hey, you know, good luck with everything. You know, you said you want to be an actor, right? At least being here in LA. I hope to see you on Netflix soon. Or let's say if you didn't talk about anything, you could just say, hey, you know, have a great night. It's a great night out. Or have a great day. It's beautiful out. I don't know. You could just some kind of pick me up or something nice. And that way, when someone goes to rate you or give you a rating, that's going to be the last thing they remember, is you giving them a nice little compliment or pick me up or something along those lines. Number 22, Gas Guru. Now, Gas Guru is my favorite one when it comes to these type of apps. There's a bunch of them, and what it does, you show your location, it shows you all the gas stations in your given location and how cheap or expensive they are. Now, sometimes it's only maybe 1 or 2 cents for a gallon, so you're like, hey, you know what, I might as well just go to the one closest to me. But other times, it can be a lot. I've even seen sometimes, I'm not making this up, especially here in LA, or even just a 5 or 10 minute drive is almost $1 difference sometimes when it comes to a gallon of gas. And that can save you a lot of money in the long run. There are different additions that other apps are doing now. I've even seen on Google Maps, they actually are now showing you when you search gas, how much each one is. So there are some GPSs that do have this kind of integrated now, but even so, I think Gas Crew is super easy. There's a bunch of other apps. I think Gas Buddy, I think is another one. Just do this. It's a great way to save more money on gas. Number 23, Eco Mode. Speaking of gas now, this is a huge feature a lot of cars now, especially in this day and age, have. I think it's almost a staple in every car, especially when it comes to global warming. In case you don't know, a lot of cars have this. We hit a button, sometimes it's automatically on, sometimes not, so do some research on your own vehicle. And by turning Eco Mode on, overall, it uses less power, which equals you're using less gas. And by doing so, what you're able to do is spend way less on gas. You're gonna have to stop at the gas station a lot less. It depends vehicle to vehicle, but you'd be surprised. I remember when I was driving with my Prius, I tested out Eco Mode versus Power Mode or normal, and it was insane how much longer I could drive for on Eco Mode, and it would use significantly less in gas, which also saves you more time and more money. Number 24, 4 a.m. I'm gonna be honest, I never did this. I know a lot of drivers, tons of drivers who swear by this. I just could never do it. And what I'm talking about is waking up, can be around like 3:30 a.m., starting driving around 4 and going to about, let's say, 10-ish. Now, I know I mentioned the peak hours being one of the best times to drive and events. However, from 4 a.m. to about 10 a.m. is a huge window to drive because, one, you're doing all those airport rides. You can make a lot of money driving people to the airport, and a lot of people are going around that time. And as you drive, let's say, from 4 a.m. to about, let's say, 7-ish a.m., maybe 6:30, then you start touching upon the morning commutes. I know a lot of drivers who swear by it, who say, look, I'm gonna drive from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm gonna get done with driving at 10 a.m. I can do whatever I want for the rest of the day. I have the entire day to myself. I just could never do this. The idea of waking up at 3:30 or 3:45 or even 4 and driving sounds horrible to me, but I know a lot of drivers who said they made an insane amount of money driving during this time, especially because not a lot of drivers are on the road, and especially when people need to get from point A to point B, that's where you come in. Number 25, one to finish off with one of my favorites and one that I wish I knew earlier. Probably the number one on this list that I really wish I knew earlier, and that is bathroom addresses. I know this is weird, but as you can imagine, when you're driving around a lot, you're gonna have to go to the bathroom. It's part of life. And especially in the city, as we all know, it's so much fun trying to find a bathroom in terms of parking and trying to run in or whatever. So what I suggest doing is having on your phone, whether it's a notes app or however you want to do it, is any single time you find a very easily accessible bathroom, like say this easy parking, you don't have to worry about paying a meter, it's just very easy for you to go in and out, put that address in your phone. That way, in your city, you'll have a bunch of bathroom addresses, and let's say you're like, oh shoot, I gotta go to the bathroom, here's my location, you look at the addresses, you see which one's closest to you, you immediately drive to it. Another kind of sub-pro tip, on top of this pro tip, is also put in any lock codes. So one of the best places to go, of course, is a Starbucks. And what I would do actually is, like say I would go to a Starbucks, I'd remember that bathroom code and put it in my notes. That way, if I had to go to that same Starbucks again, I'd have that code in. Granted, they do change it, I think, every 2 or 3 weeks, but even still, at least if you have those bathroom codes, it makes it a lot quicker for you to run in, type in that code, go to the bathroom, get out, you continue driving. And now, a bonus tip. And this is the number one way to make a lot of money as a driver. I get asked a lot by some drivers saying, hey Mark, with all these pro tips, what's the number one? If you had to give one pro tip to maximize your earnings as a driver, what would it be? And that is analytics. What I mean by this is, yes, peak hours are important. Events are important. If you want to do from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m., that's important in terms of those times to drive. But every city is very different. Every app too, Uber versus Lyft, sometimes I've noticed a little bit different in terms of the best time to drive. What I suggest, and I know this sounds kind of weird, but this is what I did when I first started driving, is I would track during those times that I would drive and how much money I was making. I literally had an Excel spreadsheet, again, former accountant and me, tracking the best times to drive. And what I noticed, for example, just using an example in Boston, I noticed that in the morning commutes, probably not surprising, people are typically going from a residential area to their job, which is in a different part of the city. So I found with traffic and everything going on, I could really only do one, maybe two, but typically one really good ride in the morning. And what I found is after 9 a.m., a lot of those bonuses, those peaks, those incentives really dip off. So I could really do one ride-ish from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I found I was better off waiting till 8:20, roughly about 8:20 to 8:25 to turn my app on than keeping it on at 8. What I would do is turn the app off around 8-ish a.m. whenever I got done with my last ride, wait 20 minutes or 15 minutes, then turn the app on. The reason why is I could really only do one ride, like I said, and that ride was going to be way higher paying around 8:20 or 8:25 than if I accepted that ride or another ride at 8 a.m. So I was almost better off just eating that 20 minutes and just not working at all and waiting for a really high surge or high paying ride. So that's where I suggest always track your analytics. This is the number one way to make the most amount of money as a driver. Maybe in most cities, a Wednesday night isn't that good, but maybe in your particular city, Wednesday nights you can make a lot of money. Make sure you track everything as much as possible. This is something you might even start noticing almost automatically the more that you drive. You're like, yeah, you know what? I shouldn't drive at 7 a.m. If I start at 6:30, I can make more money, or even 6. I know some drivers who start driving around like 6 a.m. and go to 9 a.m., so a 3-hour morning commute kind of working window, as opposed to me when I drove in Boston, 6 a.m. wasn't really that good, so I'd only do 2 hours, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. By tracking everything, you can find the most optimal time to drive. And lastly, a second bonus tip, and I had to say it, clean your car. I know this is unbelievably Captain Obvious, but it still is insane to me when I take Lyft and Ubers now, seeing that, wow, this car is super dirty, and this is both the inside and outside. Now, in Boston, I remember, it would rain a lot, so it wasn't really an issue in terms of the outside of the vehicle, but here in LA, it barely ever rains, and if the outside of your car looks super dirty and dusty, like I said, because it doesn't rain a lot here in LA, or maybe another area, that's a huge impression, because remember, the first thing somebody kind of gauges of you when it comes to a driver, the first initial thing in terms of that rating is when they see your car. So if you pull up and your car is super dirty all over the vehicle, that's immediately not the best impression. And then if they get in and super dirty on the inside, that's also not a good impression. In addition, of course, to making sure your car smells nice. Cleanliness really goes a long way, and I know this sounds like super Captain Obvious, but you'd be surprised how many drivers just don't even notice this or forget about it or don't even put in any effort. Making your car look clean and smell nice both on the inside and outside goes a long way.